Let's make a cheesy roasted vegetable lasagna. I'm Gian and today I'm going to show you how to make this absolutely delicious meatless lasagna. If you're looking for meatless options and for a meal that packs a ton of veggies without sacrificing on flavor, then you're going to need to make this dish. The first step is to dice and roast the vegetables, and I'm using eggplant, zucchini, sweet red pepper, and also an onion. You can also use other combinations, such as you can use yellow squash, you can use butternut squash. Mushrooms will be fantastic in this as well. I love eggplant, so it's a no-brainer that I added it to this dish. What I do love about it in this recipe is the texture. While eggplant can be somewhat watery, because we're roasting it first, it's going to help to draw some of that moisture in the eggplant. First, I cut the eggplant into slices and then I cut them into about 1-inch pieces, and I am leaving the skin on because it does add a bit of texture and prevent it from being too mushy. And I'm going to place this into a large bowl because I will be seasoning the vegetables. It's important to layer the flavors to make sure that this dish has as much flavor as possible. Next, I'm going to get started on slicing the zucchini, and I'm slicing them into about 1/2 inch thickness. You want to be mindful of the size that you cut the vegetables because you want to make sure that it all cooks at the same time. You don't want some to burn while the other vegetables are still fairly raw. I still remember the first time that I had vegetable lasagna. I was at a friend's house. I was in my late teens, and her mom cooked up a pan of vegetable lasagna from Costco, and I was simply blown away. I was so surprised at how good it was. Next thing I want to do is to slice up 1 red bell pepper, and I am just cutting around the seeds in the middle because we do not want that in the dish, obviously. And I'm going to remove that little membrane. I find that when you roast it, it can become bitter, so I'm just taking that, just doing that little extra step to make sure it tastes as good as possible. Next, I'm going to slice it, then I'm going to cut it into about 1-inch pieces. And while this is a roasted vegetable lasagna, so obviously it implies that you have to roast the veggies, you do not have to roast the veggies if you don't want to. You can also saute the veggies in some olive oil if you prefer to do it that way. But I would highly recommend doing it this way because it adds so much more flavor. Next, I'm going to peel and chop 1/2 an onion, and this is a fairly good sized onion, so this is why I'm using just about 1/2. If you want to use a little bit more, you can, because with the vegetables it doesn't have to be an exact amount. You can mix and match and add more or less of whatever you prefer. And once I've given it a rough chop, then I am going to try to separate those little layers of the onions because I don't want it to be the big thick chunks. It's not going to cook properly if it's still whole. So just separate those layers before adding it to the other vegetables. And as always, if you are interested in making this recipe, it is on my blog, Gian Can Cook. I will have the link directly to the recipe in the description box below the video, or you can just simply head over to my blog and it should be right there on the front page. Next, I have smashed 2 garlic cloves, and this is the easy way to peel it if you're going to dice the garlic. And I am just going to smash it even more to make it nice and flat, and then I am going to chop it. And I have a confession. Peeling garlic is one of my least favorite tasks to do in the kitchen. There's just something about getting those sticky little wrappers off of the garlic I absolutely detest. Now, once I've diced the garlic, I'm going to add it to the vegetables. I'm adding olive oil, salt, black pepper, and Italian seasoning. And you want to add the oil because you want it to stick to the vegetables, but it also helps the vegetables to roast really nice and crisp on the outside. Once I've added all of my seasonings, I'm just going to get in there and mix it. And I find the best way to do this is with my hands. Just make sure your hands are nice and clean and just get in there and massage the vegetables to make sure that all of that seasoning coats all of the vegetables. Then I'm going to add the vegetables to my sheet pan, and I'm using 2 sheet pans because I don't want to crowd the vegetables. I want there to be space between the vegetables, and I want it to be one layer. That way the air gets to move all around the veggies and it roasts really well. You don't want it to steam. If there are too many vegetables on the pan, it will steam instead of roasting and becoming nice and crisp. And I like to use parchment paper to line my pans because it makes cleanup so easy. And I've already preheated my oven at 400 degrees. So I'm going to place the pan into the 2 bottom racks into the oven and let it roast at 400 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. Now once that cooks, I'm going to put a huge stock pot of water onto the fire, and I'm going to heavily salt the water. Cover it and bring it to a boil. Next, we need to use fresh herbs for the ricotta mixture. So I finely diced parsley, and then I'm going to chop basil, and I'm just rolling the basil leaves tightly, and then I'm just going to finely slice it into ribbons. To a bowl, I'm adding ricotta cheese, and I am using part skim ricotta. Then I'm going to add 2 eggs. The eggs will act as a binder. Once it cooks, the cheese mixture is going to hold together and it won't be runny. To the ricotta, I'm adding the basil and also the chopped parsley. I'm going to add finely grated Parmesan cheese and mozzarella cheese. And like I said before, it's all about layering the flavors. So it's important to season every step of the way. You season the vegetables, then you added a little bit of salt to the noodles, so that's going to have some sort of flavor. And now we're seasoning that ricotta mixture. I'm also adding salt and black pepper to it. I'm going to give that a good mix and then set it aside. Next, I'm going to remove the vegetables from the oven and just place them on the side. And this is exactly what you're looking for. You want them to be cooked, but you don't want it to be overcooked, because remember, the vegetables will continue to cook in the lasagna. So it does need to be slightly undercooked, but as you can see, all of that char on the eggplant and the zucchini and the peppers, that is going to add a ton of flavor to this dish. Once the water has come to a boil, add the lasagna noodles, and I'm using the boiled lasagna, but you can also use the no boil sheets. Either one works. And I'm just using my tongs to separate the noodles to make sure that it doesn't stick as it cooks. And I'm just going to cook this until it's al dente, so it's going to have a little bit of bite to it. Be sure not to overcook it because it will continue to cook in the oven when we bake the whole lasagna. Once the lasagna noodles are done, you're going to strain it and set it aside. And then it's time to start to layer the dish. And you can make your own sauce, or you can do what I did, and I'm using my favorite jarred marinara sauce. To the bottom of my baking dish, I'm just adding just enough to cover the bottom of the pan. Then on top of that, I am going to layer 3 lasagna noodles, and you want to make sure that they sort of overlap because you want them to form a base for the next level. Next, I'm going to add that ricotta cheese mixture, and you want to add about 1/3 of the mixture because this will have 3 layers of filling. And just be mindful, it does not have to be thick, because remember, you're going to have 3 layers of cheese, 3 layers of vegetables, and in the end, it's just the perfect amount. So it's okay if it looks like this. It'll be just fine, I promise. And I'm just going to spread it out just to make sure that it covers all of the noodles before adding the vegetables. Next, I'm going to add 1/3 of the vegetables on top of that cheese mixture. And you just want to spread it out just to make a nice, just one even layer. Next, I'm going to add a drizzle of the marinara sauce over the vegetables. And again, just like with every other layer, just add a light amount. It's going to seem like it's too little bit, but again, we have 3 layers of everything, so it'll be the perfect amount in the end. Then I'm going to top it with mozzarella cheese and just a light dusting of Parmesan cheese. And I'm just gonna repeat the layers. Add another layer of the lasagna sheets. Then you're gonna add the ricotta cheese mixture. Top it with another third of the roasted vegetables. Then you're gonna add the marinara sauce, sprinkle some mozzarella cheese, sprinkle some Parmesan cheese, and then you're gonna repeat it a third time. And look at that. This looks simply amazing. I don't know about you, but just the sight of this makes me excited. And once we've done the final layer, it's time to cover it with even more lasagna sheets. To keep the pasta from drying out, I'm going to add sauce to the top, and you want to spread it all across the lasagna sheet. You want to make sure that the pasta is coated with the marinara sauce. And then I'm going to top it with, you guessed it, even more cheese. And I'm just going to cover the top with the grated mozzarella cheese and just a sprinkling of the Parmesan cheese. I'm going to cover this with foil, place it into the oven and bake it for about 30 minutes at 350 degrees. Then I'm going to remove the foil and allow it to bake for an additional 10 to 15 minutes. Allow it to cool for about 20 to 30 minutes just so that the lasagna sets up. Once it's cool, you're going to want to cut it into slices. And I am cutting it into 12 generous slices. This dish was definitely a labor of love, but it is totally worth it. The combination of the roasted vegetables and the cheeses with the pasta is absolutely delicious. I'm just going to top it with even more fresh parsley to serve it up. And there you have it, all of the layers of cheese and roasted vegetables, and this was so good, y'all. I am not even overselling this. Let me know what you think about this video by leaving a comment below. If you do try this recipe, share it with me over on Instagram at GNCanCook, and I will see you in the next one.